align to that, and then we can align to everything, right? And intention and movement will move us into a potential. And for me, in my own journey, um, yeah, I've chosen men's work mostly because of my own journey, and also because it's my language actually at this moment,
Mm.
in this moment of life right now, at least, right? So like we started with, truth is always changing, but right now for me, my truth is to speak in this language of men.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening in again. Welcome wherever you are in the world. I always really enjoy that you're listening into it because I really do my best to find interesting stories, interesting people. And today I found somebody who's from Norway, but got himself, sorry, Norway, Denmark. Sorry, my apologies, Denmark. And he traveled the world, tried to find himself, and he landed into Brazil. He's also the founder of King Kong Academy. I want to introduce you to Casper Sørensen. My apologies if the name is not spoken out right, but welcome to this podcast, Casper.
Thank you, Sandesh.
Do you have a spiritual name?
It's Veda.
Veda.
Veda,
Okay.
yeah.
And what does Veda mean?
Um, the continued knowing, I think. And I actually, like, it's knowledge, right? But there's knowledge is like a stagnant thing. So in my interpretation, it's knowing. It's like the continuous knowing. And I can definitely feel that in myself. Like my truth changes a lot.
Does that also mean that you're like a continuous student?
I think we have to be. I think it's not possible to not be a continuous student actually, because life is
Mm,
evolving in every aspect. As in all of our experience, life is continuously evolving.
mm.
So and that's why I think it must be a knowing, right? Because it's
Knowing
always
evolves.
expanding. Yeah, universe is expanding, right? Everything is expanding all the time.
Mm, mm. Wow. So I got to know you just a while ago. I heard you've been quite on a journey on discovering yourself. But before we go into that, I always ask the question, what do you drink after morning yoga?
After morning yoga, that really depends on the day. Either it's coffee or it's water.
Ah, it's coffee and water. So
Yeah.
all the way in Brazil. Oh yes. You
Yes.
have good coffee there?
It's good coffee, yeah. To be honest, I think all the best coffee is getting exported, but we we do get some good coffee.
And then the rest is water, right? There's no indigenous juices or anything that you get from the forest and
Yeah, out there we have different things. There's a lot of the original. I mean, a lot of things come from the Amazon, right? And when I say coffee, actually, I don't just drink coffee. I always drink coffee with cacao from the Amazon. So it's a special cacao that we get here. And I stopped making like a normal black cup of coffee since I was in India the first time, and after that I couldn't return to black coffee. So I always mix it with all kinds of things.
okay, so tell me a bit more about that. What kind? So cacao.
Cacao,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. What
So
else?
the magic in it, I think, which is something I could like just draw a little bit of Kundalini inside of it, is that you need to oxidize the coffee. You need to like I wanted to use the Danish word for it, but like put air inside of it. Like
Yes.
make it more fluffy, make it more alive, move the vibration of the coffee. I think that's the most important part of it. And whatever you mix in there, I've mixed coconut oil, butter, bulletproof coffee. That's when it started for me. But Now I keep it to a simple coffee and cacao, which is a potent. So it's raw cacao, of course, like
Mm.
the ones you would use for cacao ceremony, and it's quite a potent mixture. I call it the Soma of Kali.
Sol Makali.
Soma of Kali. So Soma is this Amrita, right? This liquid from Shiva, and Kali because it's the black one, right? The great black one,
Mm.
and it's it has a lot of potency.
I'll try that. We have cacao here in my house. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I use from another yogi cacao mixed with spirulina,
Yeah,
and I might add that into the coffee. How would that be? Interesting. Anyways, thank
yeah.
you for being here. I'm so
Thank you.
excited.
Yes, me too.
Um, because you know why I'm always excited? Because the Kundalini yoga world is predominantly female.
Mm,
Although it was taught by Yogi Bhajan and there's a lot of old wise teachers, but the classes are mostly women. I don't know
true.
whether that's for you. But then I noticed King Kong Academy focuses purely on men, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Why?
Because of my own journey, like quite basically because of my own journey, and um, yes, sometimes it's like where to start, right? Because yes, we're soul, right? And soul is without gender. And but in our experience, we live in a dual world. Um, and so where to start? I mean, I believe there's a difference between men and women, if we choose so, at least. We can also choose otherwise, but if we choose so, there's a difference. And in our own path, I think it's we can align to that, and then and we can align to everything, right? And intention and movement will move us into a potential. And for me, in my own journey, um, yeah, I've chosen men's work mostly because of my own journey, and also because it's my language actually at this moment,
Mm.
in this moment of life right now, at least, right? So like we started with, truth is always changing, but right now for me, my truth is to speak in this language of men, and also where I see that, like you say, women is already like a predominant force in Kundalini. So I believe it's very important that somehow we invoke the men, however that can look and be, and what language to use in that. Yeah, so
Wonderful.
that's my exploration. Yeah.
So before we dive into your journey, let's go back to Casper before the journey. Tell us about where you come from, your childhood or your teenagerhood, just before you went on your
Mm.
search.
Yeah, so I started out being a very shy boy, and guess I still had perhaps have a shyness to me. Um, and I didn't really have an identity. And if we have to go into this, which is of course a big part of my story, but the first time I broke through something was through violence and fighting on the street. And it actually started with me um, being attacked by somebody, and I was not capable of doing anything. I was afraid of doing something.
Hmm.
And I went home that night after that experience and looked myself in the mirror, and I told myself that that was never going to happen again. And maybe a month later, maybe less, I started boxing. So I started training boxing full time, and that boxing is fire, right? So my fire was ignited through boxing, and I turned out to be a very good boxer and a very disciplined boxer. And so, and talking about identity, I also created an identity out of that. So I started fighting on the streets, and I started getting an identity for that because people started to recognize me in some way in complete opposite of what I was. Because I was a shy boy, never saying nothing, always staying in the back, and all of a sudden I was this alpha, a lot of testosterone, very aggressive being.
What age was that?
Well, it started at 16, 15, I think.
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yeah.
And I think I almost was in a fight in every weekend from 16 till I was perhaps 24.
Wow. That
Maybe not every
surprises me.
weekend, but a lot. Yeah.
That surprises me. Somebody from Denmark, because Denmark is not a very aggressive country, is it?
Yeah, with alcohol, I think yes. And there's something about the transmission, right? Like, what are you transmitting? And if you embody an aggressive attitude, that's your transmission. And I like call it manifestation, call it law of attraction, whatever you want. But I called in all the people who wanted to fight. I was just like a flypaper for that. And I met them and I was aggressive myself. So the law of the universe, man.
Wow, I'm flabbergasted. Um,
Yeah.
you caught me off surprise. Well, I learned fighting too, but just out of defense. I understood that if you want the big bullies to stop you, you need to put up a really good fight, and then they'll find somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you become a bully also, or did you just attract aggressive people and then? What I mean, what was the identity and role you were taking on?
Well, I got recognized, Sandesh. That's the biggest thing. I was finally seen. And I think that was actually my big impulse in continuing and finally being somebody, whatever that means, right? But finally being recognized and having some sort of identity.
Yeah, that
Um,
have been energizing.
yeah, well, it gave me something, and all of a sudden I was in the I was in the ball, and the ball was rolling, and the ball was rolling very fast. And if I continue a bit, that ball evolved into drugs, criminal activities, and people to be with. And it's a fast rolling ball, that one, and it's very dark. I can see the darkness now. I can also I can see the darkness I was in. But when you're in the ball, you don't recognize that you're in a ball of darkness, actually, right? And we all know that. Call it falling asleep or being asleep. I don't know.
I always say it different because I must say I've been there too, in this dark ball. But what I came to realize is, in the darkness you can find your light.
Perhaps only in the darkness you can find the light.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
what did you find, or what started you to realize I'm finding something about myself?
I don't know what it was actually, but I all of a sudden I felt an intuitive call to leave Denmark. And and it was an invitation from a friend of mine that he said, shouldn't we go to Australia? You can get this work visa in Australia. And in the beginning it was completely out of my mind. I didn't even want to go to the mall alone. Right? Very introverted, very shy. Still, even though I was this persona, but this started to expand my vision and expand my line of thought, I guess. And all of a sudden, it was like all I could think about was that I needed to leave. And I ended up getting a friend with me, and we went to Australia together. And there's an interesting thing is because I went with this friend, he was still seeing me as this person, as this boxing Casper. And so I could not step away from that identity. But after a year, he left and I continued my journey in Thailand. And once he left, I was like, I had a fresh piece of paper in some way. And I went to a Vipassana retreat. It's also worth mentioning. I went to a Vipassana retreat after I was in a fight in Thailand. I got in a fight and it was bad. I mean, you don't want to fight in Thailand and get arrested. And it happened to me. And I think like a month after or something, I went to a Vipassana, a 28-day Vipassana, which is
What is a
how they do.
vipassana? Not everybody knows this.
Right. So Vipassana is the way the Buddha taught meditation. So as at least as what we know, right? We don't really know what the real truth is, but Vipassana is learning to identify oneself with the one who observes and not with the experience. So it's very masculine practice in some way because you simply identify as the witness. And this was a 28-day Vipassana, and I had never done any meditation before. And you sit the whole day pretty much, and you go through. I went through a lot of pain, and I didn't understand why. I thought I was not flexible enough, but as I've gone later in my spiritual development and journey, I see how much I let go of, and that was that pain. I at the same time I lost 9 kilos in those 28 days because of fasting, of course, but also because of a lot of energy leaving my system, is what I believe now.
Wait, before we go further, why the heck did you choose for vipassana 28 days after a fight?
So the idea of Vipassana, it actually started in Australia. So the first thing that happened to me in spiritual context of conscious spiritual development movement was that I heard about the power of the now with Eckhart Tolle. I think most who are moving in meditation know about this book, and it's a very amazing book. And I just heard it out of the corner of my ear, actually. Somebody speaking about it. And it like pulled me. And then I downloaded the audiobook and I tried to listen to it for, I don't know, 3 months or something. But it's Eckhart himself speaking, and it's so boring. And he has this meditation bell, and I would always fall asleep. But if you know what Yoga Nidra, Yoga Nidra works on the subconscious mind. And I think that's what happened to me, actually. I think it just like, because I was listening to him, but I was sleeping, I think he like did something to me on my subconscious level. And then I met a woman who spoke about she was at a 3-day meditation retreat where they were fasting and they only ate one time a day. And I had never heard anything like it. You only eat one time a day and you meditate the whole day. It sounded like crazy for me. But because I was a boxer and I had this warrior mindset of wanting to go, it stuck with me. And when I was up in Chiang Mai in Thailand, I started looking for meditation because there's a lot of, Buddhist tradition in Thailand. And then I saw this 28-day retreat. You had to stay there for 7 days. And I thought, okay, it's an experience. If you want to learn something, go for it. And as soon as I got there, I thought I was going to be there for 7 days. But I arrived and I thought, I'm going to do the whole 28 days. It just felt like this is what I need to do. And I committed to it.
Wow. Wait a minute. What age were you then?
I have been 25.
Okay. So what at 25? What do you do to allow yourself, to convince yourself, to obey to something in yourself to go for 28? Because 28 days, that wasn't a normal 25-year-old boxer thought.
No. It's a great question. It's a really great question. Could it be soul listening? Because like you say, it has nothing to do with my consciousness at that moment. I listened to rap music. I trained boxing. I was fighting in the weekend. It had nothing to do with my personality. And yet something called me. I didn't know anything about meditation. I Googled meditation, and you know, all these photos about people experience divine light and seven. That's what you see when you back then when you Google meditation. Now there's different things about it, but back then in 2000, it must have been 12 or 13, there was nothing else about meditation really. So I had no idea. I thought maybe I could leave my body or maybe leave my suffering, to be honest.
Ah, leaving your suffering.
Yeah, the big trap.
Ah, because the Buddhist talks about enlightenment is to renounce all suffering, right? Renounce all attachments, to leave all the suffering.
Yeah.
Was that maybe something in there that you thought, is this a way to stop suffering?
I think in some way I thought, yeah, I was going to have a transcendental experience.
So, so if I have to recap, maybe what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, you were suffering. You were looking for a way out of suffering.
I think actually I was looking, I've been looking at a way out of suffering for longer than that.
Hmm.
Because the reason why I was also dissatisfied in Denmark, just going through the motions, you know, I just finished my education and I thought I'm going to work like this for the rest of my life. There was an anger about that. Like this is not going to be my life. I don't want to work like that. I'd rather be a criminal than I want to just go through the motions. And so there's always been a dissatisfaction inside of me, I think. And so the searcher has always been there.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. So out of Vipassana, 28 days. Tell us another other milestones. Where did you go? India, I heard.
Yeah, after that, well, there's many things to be said after this Vipassana. When I left there, I left out of the temple and I was waiting for the bus, and I felt like I wasted a month of my life. I got nothing out of it. I just sat through a lot of pain. I had a couple of moments where like I transcended pain and I was like in this like real state, but most of it I was just in pain for 28 days. And I thought, why? But when I went back to Thailand. I ended up staying in Thailand for 1.5 years. I went to train Muay Thai, Thai boxing, and my mind after that was incredible. I don't know how to mention it, but like I went into another toxic mode, which is like training and this feeling of like it's all just mind and pain can be transcended. And I was training like a crazy person, but I also changed my life completely. I've never been drunk since then. I've been tipsy, but not drunk since that time in Thailand. And I just started focusing only on health, like only the health of my body, only like physical peak. Um, yeah, physical peak. And that transcended into yoga at some point and transcended into breath work. And this is actually how the ball started rolling for me. Um, because I was training Muay Thai and I was thinking, how can I get more flexible? And then I started actually my first yoga class. That didn't do so much for me until I tried Kapalabhati, Breath of Fire. And when I tried Breath of Fire, my whole life changed, actually. I think again, my whole life changed. But Breath of Fire was the catalyst.
Okay, let's dive into that. Recall the moment. What did you realize? What did you experience?
I was like, what the hell is this? I felt all these like, getting high. I got high from breathing and I was like, whoa, what the hell is this? And it was actually not with yoga. I was at a free diving course in Thailand also. So I was in this free dive course and we learned this pranayama technique or this breathing technique. And I remember that afternoon, I just went home and I just did breath of fire. And I just did breath of fire because I have the warrior, very strong, right? I have this very disciplined person. So I did a lot of workout. I worked out in the morning and then I did breath of fire and I
How
explored
long?
this not long, just maybe going to the edge of everything, right? 28 days, but I like to go to the edge. So I would sit and I would do breath of fire and I would inhale deeply and then I would just hold the breath until I peed my pants. And so in the literally, so in the first time I had to pee in my pee, I stopped, of course. But then I started getting more comfortable with it, and in the end, I just sat because I was in Thailand. I sat with no underwear on, and I pissed all over the floor by just letting go so much.
Wow.
I can't believe that I'm saying this, but yeah.
That's what makes the podcast real, right? Thank you. You want us to cut it out or not?
No, maybe it's an inspiration for some, but I like letting go of the root in some way. I can look at that now. I didn't know that back then, but like letting go of the fear centers, like loosening them up, because that's actually what happened to me. The breath hold and just like trying to let go of my body and relaxing into that, and that ended up in having to release my bladder.
Yeah, breath of fire, if you're not well prepared, if your body cannot contain, it's a lot of fire, right?
Yeah.
But I guess you were trained in fire, so you could handle that.
Yeah, and I got dizzy, right? I almost passed
Yeah.
out and all these
Yeah.
experiences.
Getting high on your own supply.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, some people don't realize that when you practice breathing, you can really get high.
Yeah,
You don't need anything else, right? There's so much
yeah,
energy in the air, in the
yeah,
prana. Yeah, so much. Okay, wow. Okay, so from Muay Thai to kind of yoga and breath work.
yeah.
Did that change the identity of Casper?
Stop drinking, stopping to drink and have nobody to reflect back to me who I was because I continued to travel, right? So in total, I ended up traveling for 12 years and now I've ended up in Brazil, right? But like it was pretty much I left Denmark and I was only back in Denmark after 3.5 years. And so 3.5 years was what I needed to establish a new identity for myself. And the conscious spiritual search happened after these 1.5 years, right? Where I went to the Vipassana. And the rest of the time was just like a deep exploration of actually experimenting with spiritual life, I guess, spiritual practices, breathing practices, yoga, rainbow gatherings, hippie festivals. Like it kept on expanding for me.
Yeah. And it's kind of incredible, right? Once you get into these practices, what you feel in your body all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like superhuman power, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm not well trained as you are, but I can remind, you go to these festivals or whatever, and you surrender to the exercise, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden it happens. You feel this incredible power inside of you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you came back next to physical power, a lot more spiritual power. What happened?
Well, maybe as most, I'm an extremist, right? So I went to the other extreme of spirituality, and then I really started. Actually, this was in New Zealand. So after Thailand, I went to New Zealand, and I found Bihar School of Yoga, so Satyananda Yoga, in the lineage of Shivananda, and that was my first yoga experience, like real yoga experience, and it actually happened with chanting. It happened with the Gayatri mantra. I was at a yoga class and I heard the Gayatri mantra and it just hit me. Like that was still this identity of boxing and training boxing, but now also with this breathing and all these things. And all of a sudden I heard this mantra and it just touched me. I still remember laying in Shavasana and the teacher singing Gayatri. And I went home after that and I found the Gayatri mantra on YouTube. There was no Spotify back then. I found it on YouTube and I just listened to it the whole day, the whole day. And I woke up every morning listening to the Gayatri mantra, and then I started learning the Gayatri mantra. And I got so joyful from it.
Okay, now you transcend into mantras. That's interesting. A guy talking about mantras. You're not the first on the podcast. So tell me, why mantra? What did this do for you? This first Gayatri mantra.
You don't understand what they're saying, right? So it's just the feeling. There's only the feeling left. It's beyond mind. And I think that was it. It was beyond mind, and yet, you feel this dense history and the devotion. And I think probably that touched me the most. And maybe I can correlate it with my own sense of discipline to things. It's discipline is also like a devotion, right? And this devotion I heard in that mantra at that point. And once I started on the yogic path, that's really devotion and it's discipline at the same time. And I got very fascinated by this, and also of course the effects of opening up the physical body. And so I went to this ashram in New Zealand called Anahata Yoga, but it is in the lineage of Bihar School of Yoga, and was experiencing yoga for the first time. So we woke up at 5 or whatever, these hours are, and we chanted for a period of time and did morning yoga and Surya Namaskar. And again, I got super high on Surya Namaskar because it opens up a lot of things and you almost pass out. And I passed out many times since then from Surya Namaskar. And I like these feelings. To be honest, I like it.
It's kind of a drug, right? In a way.
Totally.
Yeah. You
And they
can get.
invited me to go to India. And I went to India with them. And I felt so much power. I don't think I've ever felt so much power in my life than when all these things opened up for me.
Okay,
And this
but
has
but, but
been
just a guy to a guy. You've been doing all these spiritual things. You were boxing. What did you do to survive, to make a living? Because great travels. But what did you do?
That's a great question. I mean, I worked in Australia. So I went on a working visa and I worked there in Australia. And after the 3.5 years, that was right after New Zealand, I came back and I worked as a carpenter in Denmark. And to be honest, it doesn't make sense. I've worked so little in that many years, and I've only worked as a carpenter pretty much, unless until now, where I'm starting to develop my own King Kong Academy. It's starting to bring in something, but still, my main source of income has been carpentry and living very, very, very basic, right? So when you go on the yogic path, when I went on the yogic path, at least, I learned about sadhus, I learned about the wanderers, right? And I adopted this lifestyle very much. So living very, very basic. And I've had 3 years where I didn't pay for places to stay. I slept on the street, or I did couch surfing, or I slept with people that I met when I was hitchhiking. And it just works. It always just works. You meet yourself when you travel like that a lot. You meet a lot of fear and you meet a lot of doubt, especially when you're hitchhiking and you don't have a place to sleep in the night. Um, and I'm good at pushing myself. So it's not always been healthy, and it's not something I recommend the way that I did. It was what I needed at that point. And that's how it worked. And that's how it has worked. And I've always had enough. I've never been insecure about my funds, but I just didn't use my funds because I wanted to test like what's possible actually. And do I need anything in life?
So, do you need anything in life, Casper?
No, I don't need anything, but I choose to. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to do anything, but I choose to.
And what are you choosing to now?
Now I'm choosing to make the movement of offering what I've been through with other people and that of course is in the line of men's work, as I was sharing about, and um awakening man, awakening men. That's my call, and that's what brings me the biggest joy.
And why do men need to be awakened? Like, if I'm listening right now, I'm probably I found this podcast called Kundalini Awakening. So, why the heck should men awaken?
They shouldn't unless they feel like there's something else.
Something else than what?
Something else than a mundane way of living. And in the mundane is also a big fear of keeping exactly where we are, right? And I call it now for being asleep. And that might be a little bit pushy, but that's how I see it, because I understand how I was, and perhaps still am, asleep in some ways of my life and in some way of my being, and awakening from that um, takes courage and takes warriorhood, the warrior of light, nah? The warrior of discipline, and the warrior of wanting something different, of not settling for the mundane. And if we want to do that, if you want to be perhaps even a protector of communities, but at least like a provider in relationship, and keep expanding our capacity to hold love and to share love in ourselves and also in our relationship and in our communities, then men's work, I think, is fundamental, actually.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I don't think there's many men around the age between 30 to 50 who can say, my dad told me how to open my heart and come from the heart, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I believe that that's what it means to awaken, is that you can contribute to the world coming from the heart first,
yeah,
not leaving the head, using the
yeah,
head, but coming from the heart. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's rewind a little bit, because you are a Kundalini yoga teacher and coach.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Well, when did Kundalini come more into life, or
Yeah,
more
so,
conscious into life?
well, I had a great experience with Kundalini yoga. So I was on the Bihar School of Yoga path, which is very like rooted in the deep yoga of Hatha yoga, very traditional. um Kriya yoga is part of that, and very meditative. And then I met Kundalini yoga when I was actually traveling in Mexico, and I just looked for Kundalini yoga festivals, and I found Kundalini yoga. I found Satnam Fest in Mexico, and I went to this festival, which is a 7-day experience of Kundalini yoga with a lot of breathing, a lot of mantra, and after that, I was just like open, like on all levels. I was open, heart open, spiritually open, physically open, like nothing else.
Oh, ho, ho. Wait. You did all that before already. What are you telling me now? You've been through the yoga, you've been through the breath work, vipassana, etc. But now you're even more open. What, Casper? I don't believe that people can understand that, what you're saying right now.
I don't think I can understand either, but like Kundalini yoga whatever you say, Kundalini yoga is different, right? You can say many things. Kundalini yoga for me is different. And when I was there in that first experience, I was like, because Bihar School of Yoga is very traditional. You can do 30 breaths of Kapalabhati, which is breath of fire, right? No more. You don't want to blow out your nervous system. And I go to this Kundalini festival where we're just doing breath of fire like throughout the whole class, and just blowing past everything, like everything, and then singing, right? So at Satnam Fest, there's live music at every class. And so a lot of beautiful, heart opening music. and 7 days of that on the beach in Mexico. I mean, that was a pretty good recipe to open up for something more. And as I do, I went home and I just studied everything I could about Kundalini yoga and started doing this 4 a.m. sadhana like religiously. And it happened that 1 month after, I started looking for like, how can I become a teacher of this? Because everybody was speaking about Kundalini being a teacher. And it happened so that one and a half months, I think, after that, in Guatemala, I met a teacher and he was offering this teacher training in Kundalini yoga, and I went for it.
Was that different because you were already a teacher of Hatha yoga before, or this was your first teacher training?
First teacher training. I've done many courses in this. I've done Pranavidya, I've done Kriya yoga, and I've done chakra sadhana, which laid a beautiful foundation for my system, for my chakra system, and something I couldn't have been without, I think, as I went on this Kundalini teacher training, something that was very fundamental for me and still is fundamental for my way of practicing, which also makes my practice not in traditional Kundalini yoga taught by Yogi Bhajan sense, because I feel like I have this Kriya yoga, which has been a great foundation for that.
What's the difference between Kriya yoga? Because in the Kundalini yoga, there's also Kriyas.
Yeah. So this Kriya yoga is completely internal. In Kriya yoga taught in Bihar School of Yoga, there's one asana, and that's the shoulder stand. The rest is just like a 2.5 hours of internal meditation throughout the spine, up and down the spine, up and down the spine. Um, that's a lot of practice, and there's a lot of internal practice. And it was a very strong experience going through the course. Many things could be said about that also. I mean, it's a big journey we're diving into, right? It's like 13 years of practice that we're trying to put into this experience, right? And some things will be missed as I'm sharing, and some things will be talked about.
So after the teacher, after being the teacher training,
I was hooked. I was hooked on Kundalini. Yeah, I was hooked on Kundalini. I was hooked on sadhana, and I went to the European Yoga Festival uh, in the summer after that, and tried White Tantric Yoga. Had like an extreme Kundalini experience of a lot of shaking and a lot very strong experience. Um, the opening continued. The opening continued for a long time after that.
opening, you are saying opening all your chakras, opening all your meridians, or what do you mean with opening?
Yeah, that's a good question. Opening the energetical bodies, I guess, and my hunger for more. And I tried to cover it up that I was not looking for enlightenment, but at that point, I was looking for enlightenment. I wanted to transcend everything. Because if I can transcend the suffering that I was in by doing all this beautiful work, can I transcend more? Is it possible to really get a whole different experience of life in the bad way? I would say, actually, in the way that it's portrayed, that it's possible to sit in nirvana and sit in samadhi completely and just be in bliss always. And that's only been a couple. One more time.
No, go ahead. That was only been a couple of.
I went to the edge. I went to the edge of that experience in my own search to figure out if it is possible. And I figured out it is possible. It is possible to transcend everything, but it also means the death of the physical body. this is what I was experiencing. So once you're in that state too much, the physical body stops to function. It stops to function. Your digestion stops to function because there's no need for it, because you're just beyond. And I realized at that point, I feel like getting a little bit emotional at this point. I was not ready to leave, actually. I am here in this human experience to live in the body, and it's still hard for me to say, but also to enjoy life. And I'm still opening up to enjoy life, which is the tantric experience, I guess. Um, yeah, like once you've been on the search for enlightenment, nothing really, in my experience, nothing has been able to follow that. Because what is there beyond that? Well, there's this human experience, which is going back to where I came from. Just this human experience.
Yeah, we're all spiritual, but we're here on earth to experience the limitations, I guess. And the limitations are a source of wisdom, a source of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because once you're enlightened, there's a certain source of knowledge you cannot comprehend, which is the knowledge around dealing with limitations.
Yeah.
Wow. And then all of a sudden you landed in Amsterdam and you did Kundalini yoga coaching.
Yeah. So that was after this India experience.
Uh-huh.
After my India experience, I thought I was going to be a brahmacharya, which is like a complete devotee, a monk of the practice. And I went back to Denmark actually to work so I could make enough money so I could just go to India and just be in sadhana. And I'd met a woman in the European Yoga Festival. We did White Tantra together. And all of a sudden I got this inspiration of the feminine. Like one day when I was in my monk mode, and in monk mode, you don't listen to music, you don't stimulate the mind at all. Just like, and I ended up like going very deep and very depressed. And all of a sudden I thought about this woman as I was looking at the sky actually, and I saw this pink cloud. And in the European Yoga Festival, I've had this experience with her. We went through this exercise where I saw this pink cloud in my Chitta Akash, in my vision. And when I saw that pink cloud, I remembered her and I wrote her. And when you haven't talked to a woman for that long of time because you've been like suppressing all your desire and all this thing, whew, all of a sudden you're feeling the feminine energy, And that made me move to Amsterdam within a very short time. Because I thought, just before I become a monk, let me just try this. And I went there and got high on the feminine.
All places in the world.
All
Amsterdam is the
pleasant.
place you get high on the feminine.
Yeah. And she was
Ah,
a Kundalini, She was a Kundalini and she had connection to Guru Gyan. And so she got me in contact with Kundalini yoga coaching. And I went there and I was actually playing the music for the sadhana, which was my offering in that place. And I started bringing all this spiritual knowledge and all these things that I had accumulated in my experience, and I started getting like a format of like, how can I maybe support the world with this? How can I maybe bring this into the world? And Kundalini yoga coaching was the entrance for me in that, right? And like starting to realize that spirituality and making money and all these things, they're not different, right? There's no separation. There is no separation in anything. And Kundalini Yoga coaching gave me that opening, the epiphany of that, which was a difficult, right? When you come from Buddhist, you come from all these things, like letting go of all these things of spirituality should be free and all these limiting beliefs that one might have and basic life. And this woman in Amsterdam, she was very much living the life of prosperity. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that.
so you surrendered all materialism and then because of the duality, you would pull back into it to have that experience.
Yeah.
And Kundalini Yoga coaching said, hey, you don't need to be poor being a yogi. You can actually build a existence and make prosperity from that, right?
Yeah. And help people, and help yourself, first and foremost, help yourself, but also help other people, which feels great.
Oh, wait a minute. You're a teacher. You're a monk. You've been so much. And what did Kundalini Yoga coaching bring?
Maybe like the way I see it, like like tracks of like movement. And because, okay, the way I looked at spirituality is like, boof, spirituality, like you have everything here. But how then do you take all that and put it into a format, put it into maybe a container, and like it's a little bit like you throw fire everywhere, like fire of spirituality. But like if you put the same, like if you put gasoline on and turn it on, it becomes a big fire. But if you put it in a car, you have like a direction, right? And Kundalini Yoga coaching, I feel like gave me that direction. It gave me the car, the wheels to move this inspiration, this feeling, this pressing my gift into the world.
And how did it help you then? Yourself.
Well, first and foremost, they got me out of monk mode and gave me this inspiration to make something out of life. So I've never been suited for a life of just working 9 to 5. That was very clear from the beginning. Too much spirituality was not it either. So how find this balance? How can I find this balance of like feeling good about my spirituality and my life and the way I am and the things that I'm doing, my dharma, or whatever you want to call it, and and also like bringing in the world. So like this pressing together of two worlds, which is not two worlds, but like what feels like a duality of the world.
And that united, bringing it together into King Kong Academy.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
Kundalini
what?
yoga, right, is that of everything, right? It's not just spirituality. It's not just the transcendental experience. It's also like, how do you make your life better? Like even your appearance and your health and your hair and your everything. And Kundalini yoga coaching, I mean, it's everything in a package. So it has the potential of life, let's say like that. The whole life, spiritual life and business life and the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow. I know we were really going fast through this. I believe we can do so many podcasts on this, but let's go to now. Now you're in Brazil and you're doing even more, right? Not only Kundalini Yoga coaching, not even Kundalini Yoga. You went into the Amazon.
Yeah. I'm not in the Amazon, but I'm in the jungle of Brazil, and I am initiating into the medicine of ayahuasca, which I think most people know by now as a medicine of yeah, from the Amazon. It's from the Amazon, which is I would say it's very much like Kundalini yoga. I associate these things very much in that it's physical, it's spiritual, it's emotional, it's the whole thing, it's the whole field. And I think ayahuasca was the last one to bring me back to earth. Kundalini yoga coaching did some, this whole thing of bringing myself back into life. There was still a part of me that wanted to like transcend. Ayahuasca has brought me completely to the ground because she is from the jungle, right? This medicine is from the jungle and it's rooted very deeply, and it brought me to earth. And I'm married now on 4 years with a Brazilian woman, and I don't think I would have been able to marry without ayahuasca because she brought me down down to earth, here, right now.
Back into the root chakra.
Yeah. So the whole back.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
And what do you do now for a living? How does life look after this long journey of going all the way up, all the way out, and then discovering that you still had something to do on Earth? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so now I'm working on this project of King Kong Academy, which is primarily a men's movement. Not that I don't do some things for women, but most of the things that I do is for men. And trying to bring in these different aspects of spirituality, warriorhood, certain principles of life, and at the same time also non-duality. Trying to bring it all in, like whatever my experience have been, like offering that. And it goes on in the format of I offer some courses, I offer some men's embodiment, so masculine embodiment it's called. Um, and of course, like learning my language also. Like so I've learned a lot of things, but like what is my language? And it's a mix of all the things that I've gone through, of course. And yeah, I'm inspired by many people, and I keep those teachers very close to my heart. And yeah, trying to bring a container for that, and which gives me a lot of joy and a lot of love. And I feel Dharma, right? Dharma coming through. Um, and once you're on that path, in my experience at least, it feels very close to the search of enlightenment. Is this pressing the gift into the world? It feels very much like the same. Feels like really purpose is moving through.
Hmm. And what did Guru Gyan have to do on that path? Because I think he played quite some key there, right?
Yeah, so Gurgian is still my way of bringing a container to my things, to my offerings, and so I'm working with Gurgian, and I have been for 2 years, and he is supporting me and bringing me back to earth, actually, again and again, bringing me back to earth, bringing me back to this moment and this experience, and supporting me, and because I'm very open, right? I'm still very open, so I get a lot of ideas, I get a lot of practices, and it's all coming through me. And a great idea is great, but only if it's like if it's made into action, right? It's made into something tangible, because else it's just a lot of ideas. It's the same as having no ideas. And Guru Gyan is supporting me and bringing these ideas into the physical, into the tangible, into the manifest.
So as a coach, you still have a coach.
Yes, for sure. For
Hmm.
sure. And also like to keep leveling up, right? Because like we actually started the conversation with, it's always expanding, right? Universe is always expanding. We are always expanding. I'm always expanding. You're always expanding, and like always bringing ourselves to a level that pushes us towards our edge. And the first course that I had on my platform was At Your Edge. Right? So like what is the edge? And the edge is tantra, right? It's like moving towards the edge again and again, the edge of death. And the death is of the old, of my old identity again and again and again, and into full potential. Not full potential, into ever expanding potential. Let's put it like that.
Wow. If I had to summarize this conversation, it's about the path of expansion, which
Hmm.
cannot happen without dancing around the edge
Yeah,
and coming back for a rest and then coming back at it again and
yeah.
going back for a rest and going at it again. And then you will always discover you can expand ever and ever and ever.
Which is the spiral of Kundalini, or you ever want to call it, right? We always end up in the same place, but perhaps from a different way, at a different place of the spine, perhaps even.
Wow. This has been really a beautiful conversation. You've got me captivated. It's well, let's see what we can do. So people can find you on King Kong Academy, right? .com.
Yes, correct.
So, dear men, if you want to expand yourself and you feel attracted to this story, just let Casper know. I think he has like a monthly free men's session.
There's a monthly free men's session, and there's monthly calls for this masculine embodiment, and we're also starting with offering some yoga on a weekly basis. Yeah, so there's
And it's
plenty of
all online.
opportunities, and it's all online because I'm in Brazil, and when I'm in Europe, which is going to be the summer, we're going to have different offerings of men's retreats. Um, there's at least one planned now. So yeah, there's
Cool.
different ways. Yes.
Awesome. We'll put your information down the link. Maybe we will get some of your lessons on the Kundalini Yoga Club. I think that should be a good idea, right?
That could be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, final word for the guys out there, whoever is searching or trying to find a way out of suffering. To all the men, why move into this path of expansion?
Move into the path of expansion. If man, move into the warrior, and the warrior is not like somebody who fights and breaks things, but like the one who keeps pushing, right? To open up, right? Because as we can see, the world is in a certain state, and we all play a part in that collectively. And so just be the foundation of the masculine, of being the container of like a place of safety for her. And I don't mean maybe a individual woman, but like for her, the big her, Pachamama, the earth and the trees, and also our women and our children, and we're needed. We're
Hmm.
needed to wake up. And life is simply, in my opinion, life is too short to waste it on TV. Yeah, maybe you need to rest and okay, rejuvenate, but like life is here to actually ask something for you. You're here to be active in life. Active participation in life is what is needed, and that in my language, in my jargon, is the warrior, the one who's active, and the one who's disciplined, and the one who keeps studying and being in reverence and being on the path.
I'd like to add to that. I think the world calls out men not to compete against each other, but to protect so that we can grow together as one, as beyond duality. That's what we need, and that's what the new men are for.
Yeah,
'Cause I feel very much that calling like you do.
yeah,
I feel like you're like a brother to me now. Thank you so much for this conversation. And this
yeah,
will not be our last interaction, but really from the bottom of my heart and for all the men out there who are searching, thank you for sharing your story, Casper.
yeah. Thank you for having me, and I feel the same. It's this thing about like once you have been in men's group, something changes. Something changes, like, and you can see men in the different in a different way. And I trust men who's been in a men's work. As soon as somebody says they do men's work, I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
feels so good. Yeah,
Yeah, men's work is not about drinking beer and getting wasted and going out at night, right?
no,
There's a lot more than that to men.
yeah,
Thank you for that.
yeah.
Sat
Thank
now.
you.
Be well.
Satnam. Thank you.